Hey Brandon, how's it going?
I'm doing well, Holly. How are you?
I'm pretty good.
It's been an interesting week, huh?
I think it is every week. Like every week has
Yeah.
something interesting going on.
Yeah, I feel like this week's been a big integration week for me. I did a lot of growth stuff last week, which we're going to get into today a little bit, but it's kind of reconciling. Okay. So when you have like new information, your mind's trying to recalibrate and measure it against the past. And then it's trying to sink in like what a cohesive thought process, right?
Right.
And so I know when I dive deep into things, my head feels a little heavy and, I'm just kind of feel like I have a lot stirring within me. And what's cool is on the other side of it, you start to get new insights because your mind expands into thinking a little bit differently. So you start to see opportunities in a different light. You become more aware of your potential path forward. So it's just it's a little bit of an uncomfortable time where I feel like I'm always gathering my thoughts right now.
Yeah.
Yeah. You know what
Like
that's like, huh?
yeah, for sure. Yeah, it's a big time for you and what you got going on in your business and everything
Mhm.
too.
Yeah. So today we're going to get into breaking free from your old identity. That's a big part of this work that we do. It's trying to figure out who I'm becoming. And and so we have to leave some parts of us behind in that process. With this expands on this concept of permission to evolve, we're looking back at the past and we're seeing what no longer works for us anymore, right? And so this just means there's a larger part of us that's calling us in a new direction. In that process, there's going to be conflicts we have to sort out because our mind is trying to make sense of our world and our reality. I can't have two things in conflict and also have this ability to move forward, right? That's where we get hesitation, self doubt, all these things, because every step I'm trying to take forward, there's something that I believe about life that's also in contradiction to that. And so it's a little bit of a tug of war. The beauty is like when we get the pieces aligned, things can work really efficiently and work really well, but that tends to be a bit of a process. It's not just a
Right.
simple, straightforward, I want to do this. And so I can just go do it and it's going to be easy and it's going to have a flow to it. Right.
Right.
It's going to be, I have a new idea that's going to expand my mind. And then in that expansion, I'm confronted with my past, which is, everything I've lived and being like, is this possible for me? Okay. And so that's the identity piece is we have to we basically upgrade our self-image, like who we believe we are. And so much of what we believe is kind of how people respond to us and in our daily routines. And it's like we're trying to figure out, okay, like what's my place in the world?
Right.
So when we talk about concepts such as owning your power or, stepping more fully into something, I've been playing small in some way and I've been behind the scenes or trying to hide. And that's going to be built on some sort of pain. And so I'm trying to wake these things back up. The things my mind's trying to protect me from my past, the things that were painful, like those are the things that stop me. And if I want to play bigger, if I want to have a fundamental shift in how I show up, I need to create safety within my system.
Right.
And so, what we're going to be doing here is we're going to be kind of comparing, contrasting these two different ways of doing this. And one is, I would say, pretty flawed, and it's the common thought process, which
Yeah.
is behavior based change. So it's like, oh, I want to lose weight, or I want to learn the skill. So I'm just going to go move towards that. And
Right.
generally, we're only looking at one little aspect of something in that thought process. And then that's not very successful most of the time. The second one is going to be identity based change. That's going to be more of like, who do I want to become? And how do my behaviors, beliefs, and my thought process, how do those align with this new version? How would that version of me act and show up and what habits would they have? Not, I'm just trying to make a one little change within myself and think that's going to create the change. It's more of I have to shed my old way of being and I have to step into something new. And that can be an
Right.
uncomfortable process. And I think it is so much in our society is we're trying to isolate the variable rather than look at things holistically. And so this
Yeah.
is kind of that difference here is I'm just trying to change one behavior and hopefully that changes who I am. But that's going to be that short-sighted approach where
Right.
we're all so complex that there's going to be a lot of things that we have to reconcile within our mind to actually become somebody different. And that's not just a straightforward thing. Um,
Right.
yeah. So, expanding on last week, we talked about it's an identity shift. We do need to become somebody different. And when that process is destabilizing, it's uncomfortable. Um, and that discomfort is a clue that we're on the right track, actually. Because our mind is trying to measure our future to our past. And it's, like, I'm not sure about this. That's going to create some discomfort within us. And if we keep moving forward, we start to gather more information about how this new reality is going to be possible for us.
Sure.
So it's being able to meet the discomfort and move through that. Um,
Yeah. So I have a question related to that. I've been hearing a few things lately around this idea that we pick up habits, or to your point, right, of how we have these behavior based things, and we pick those things up generally as a solution to a problem. If I'm hearing you correctly, and I'm hoping you can expand on this, is that if we don't get to the root of the problem, just changing the behavior isn't going to work because we're just going to go back to that thing because it solved a problem for us. Maybe it's drinking too much, or maybe it's some other behavior that could be seen as unhealthy or unproductive.
Mhm.
Doom scrolling. I don't know. I make it up.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, so we look at
These,
these behavior problems is they're actually coping mechanisms. It's how we learn to deal with certain stresses. So in their short term relief, right? That's what we're looking for. So yes, if I'm in an uncomfortable situation, yeah, I might go to alcohol. You see when people are like looking for a partner, generally, oh, I'm going to go to the bar, but then that's an uncomfortable, awkward situation, right? So yeah, I'm going to drink to calm my nerves, right? So that's to suppress the insecurities, right? And and these things are all tools, right? They change our state, right? They basically dial down the intensity of what we're feeling so that we can regulate. So they're attempts to regulate our nervous system.
right.
And they're band-aids. They're these like short-term fixes that make me feel a little bit better in the moment. And the way our system's wired is it's this whole thing of our past, right? If my past doesn't support this new future, there's going to be tons of conflicts there, and that's going to be uncomfortable as I take steps forward. And we need to be able to sit with the discomfort to actually have a fundamental shift in who we are. And so these things, they're all coping mechanisms. Obviously, prescription drug use is like all time highs, right?
Right.
Everybody's got anxiety or depression meds and things like that. It's like these are signals that our body's sending, and they're so loud that we want something to make those noises less, right? We're trying to numb it out.
Right.
So our feeling, that's a clue to what we're storing about whatever subject we're interacting with. So if I have social anxiety or yeah, I'm like dreading going to work, right? There's like a bigger thing going on there. Why am I dreading going to work? Like,
Right.
why am I uncomfortable in these situations? That's going to be some sort of pain from your past that's creating that feeling. So our nervous system's creating these alarms to point us in a direction of what the root actually is. And so our feeling sense is actually highly in tune with whatever it is we need to find out about ourselves. So if I'm just trying to make myself comfortable and I'm going to suppress what I'm feeling, now I'm not getting the information that I need to actually make a fundamental change. Okay. So these are coping mechanisms to a stress that was formed a long time ago. So every time I'm uncomfortable, I do this, right?
Right.
A lot of times, if something's painful, we're looking to avoid, we're looking to distract, we're looking to justify or make excuses. We have all these systems built in place to protect ourselves from pain. But a lot of those are bad strategies. A lot of those lead to bigger and bigger problems over time.
Right.
If there's this big ocean of things going on within me, and I'm just isolating the variable and responding to one thing, being like, okay, I'm going to change X. Um, that's not accounting for any of that. It's like I'm going to try and force this behavior, but all these things within me are fighting against me on that. And then, so I'm going to try and suppress that. Okay.
Right.
So,
Yeah.
so I'm not resolving the conflict. I'm trying to override it. That's this idea we call willpower. Okay. So,
Right. Yes.
people are like, oh, I'm going to force change. Okay. Well, that, that only lasts so long, generally under 2 weeks, to be honest with you. And the more variables I'm trying to change, the harder it gets. So our conscious mind can only focus on about 5 or 6 pieces of information at a time. And so I'm focused on this goal, and my subconscious, which is in tune with millions of bits of information, it's saying, hey, like, no, that's not who you are. Okay. And so I'm trying to take this like very limited power and override that. And that might be fine as long as I'm in a balanced emotional state. But as soon as I get under some stress and as soon as emotions start to surface, now I start to lose that self control, and I'm going to revert back to whatever's normal for me.
Right.
Okay. And the things that are normal for me, I tend to identify with. Okay. So I make that
Yeah.
part of my identity. And so if I identify with something that I'm not proud of, that I don't want to be, right? Now there's shame wrapped up in that too, which also sinks me further emotionally.
Right.
But that makes my beliefs are gonna prove true, right? So I'm looking to always validate my beliefs. And so if I believe these negative things about myself to the point I've made it part of my belief system and an identity, that's almost impossible to break out of. Okay.
Right.
And so what we have to do is go in and dismantle that. But we can only do that if there's something that we have strong enough desire behind in the future that we want to achieve, where I'm like, okay, if I want that, I have to drop this.
Right.
Where we get into motivation and things like that, is me staying the same painful enough for me to get real with myself, drop this thing so that I can move towards the better result? Or am I, that's kind of that being comfortable. If my life's not too bad where I need to change, generally it's decent. Like there's not enough to work with there to be like, oh, I want to drastically shift something. Okay.
Yeah.
And so when people are in that middle ground, yeah, generally that's what we call settling. And the problems just continue to compound over time there.
Yeah.
And so it's because we don't have enough pain. And so generally in that place, we need a wake up call. So, we need a health scare or something to come up to like shake us. And then we're like, okay, that's when we generally jump on the behavior change wagon
Right.
of I need to do something different. Like, do I even see this new potential for me?
I'm curious your thoughts on, so if we were to look at people that are kind of it, they could be in two classifications, right? So they could be in that middle ground place. I heard somebody recently refer that as like okay to great. Like these are people that are living like it's okay, could be better.
Mhm.
Maybe things are pretty good, but they're in that like that upper sort of range of the emotion. But then you have people that are like okay to depressed or okay to something worse. When you think about the shift in behavior, it seems like those two different classes of people that are going through a growth or whatever, it could be very different. They could react to this very differently, right? So the identity shift on the lower side, let's say, could be if they don't make it, it only lasts 2 weeks. They can't force the behavior change that they want, then they sort of double down and it's worse and I'm more uncomfortable and I'm more mad at myself and I see myself in this light where maybe on the other side it's just like this fall back to like things aren't that bad.
Yeah. Yeah. And so, yeah, everything is a spectrum. There's going to be different variations. And Um, there are some people that won't make any changes until like rock bottom, right?
Right.
And that's like it doesn't have to be that way, but that's the thing. So we do get caught up in a lot of these repetitive patterns where we're not actively participating in life. So even if things aren't very good and you kind of feel miserable, there could be this tendency to be like, well, this is all I know, right? And so there's not really like this hope for the future. And that's the importance of, role models, people that can like kind of shake you up and show you different possibilities and people that believe in you. A lot of times that's like I always say there's like, it's so important to have at least one person in your life that believes in you, that believes you can do better,
Right.
and holds you accountable to that. Because if we don't have any of those systems in place, it is very easy to kind of stay in the lower levels and not believe that there's anything different in store for us, right? And
Right.
and so that usually doesn't happen. We don't see, shifts there unless it's rock bottom and I have no other option but to change, right? And that's generally some trauma-based thing or a big life event happened that like really shook you out of it and made you think differently, right? But then yeah, we have like the kind of the mid-range where it's just like, well, yeah, I'll strive for some things, but it's not too bad. And so this is where we get kind of more complacency of, we're operating at a decent level, but there are some things that could be better that maybe if we did make some shifts, we could hit some new levels. And so we have to find some intrinsic motivation. We have to find something within that's going to push us to take the uncomfortable steps. Okay. That is a deep desire. So all these things, it's like it does create a little bit of, well, it's not that bad, or I don't have to change. I could keep going forever like this. There's no judgments on any of it, but it is kind of a trap too, because it's just all like, are you here to live? You here to grow? Are you here to expand? Or are you here to live the same day over and over again for the rest of your life? Right. And these are more philosophical questions. And, I would argue that deep down, like nobody wants to live the same day every day. Right.
Right.
That's more of just a response to challenges that we haven't grown from and that's created pain and we don't know path forward. And so we shut down our desires from that place. The more we get in tune with ourselves, the more it's getting this permission to evolve is like we're actually like giving ourselves permission to dream again because we're healing the things that shut us down in life, that, the disappointment, letdown, all the road pull, all the blindsided by things. We're shifting our relationship with these things and we're trying to see them as a necessary part of the process. And it's who was I before this thing happened?
Right.
And this thing happening, was that designed to push me to grow? And I didn't accept that challenge, or it was too overwhelming. So it just buried me. Right. And it could be a mixture.
Sure.
If we unpack some of these things and you start to feel lighter and you start to see actually that still is within me. Like I still do have desires. And they just got so buried where I felt like nothing else was possible, and so I gave up on them. Okay.
Sure.
And that's generally underneath it all, we're still gonna have those. It just might be very muted. Okay. And that's what a lot of these things are. It's alcohol and drug dependence and like all those things. It's we have this part of us that has desires, but we keep numbing it out and shutting it down. Okay.
Right.
So we're basically trying to quiet the signals. And that's because life is expansive, right? If I'm actually engaged in living my life, I'm going to want to grow. I'm going to want to take some new steps. I'm going to want some excitement and adventure and things like that. I'm not going to stay in this place of like, I just need to live in this tiny little bubble the rest of my life. That's only going to come from a lot of pain stacking up. And then it's just, I don't want any more of the pain. So I'm just going to kind of wall everything off.
Right. Right.
And so the behavior change model is going to be like, I'm going to be functioning in some version of shut down and really defeated in a certain area. And yeah, I'm starting to see problems there. And so maybe I want to take a step, but I'm just going to try and isolate this one variable when there's all these things in my past that are in conflict that I've built an identity around how this isn't possible for me. Okay. So our mind starts to make these exceptions to the rule that for some reason it's not possible for me, even though it might be possible for somebody else. We start to create all these exceptions and these rules, and that's creates our reality. Really, it's our perception of these problems. So if I don't have if my identity is in direct conflict with it, there is going to be a lot of sabotage coming up. There's going to be a lot of defeated thinking. It is going to feel like I'm trying to kind of push a boulder up a mountain. That's what that's going to feel like. And so what we do is we go in and we try and address the root issue and be like, there was a point where you're optimistic. There was a point where, you felt like you can make progress, but things stacked up. Okay. And, life can beat us down, right? It can be very difficult.
Right.
And in essence, that was kind of my story, right? It's that things got so hard and stacked up so much that I just had to kind of remove myself for a little bit and just reworked everything in my mind because everything
Right.
was geared towards failure. Everything was geared towards, nothing I do matters, nothing is ever good enough, like that kind of stuff. And
Right.
so you can't be believing those things and make things happen at the same time because you're just going to be at war with yourself every step of the way. And so what I teach is aligning, it's aligning with what you want. We can get there, but we are going to have to face some challenges. We're going to have to face some parts of yourself that, maybe you don't want to look at.
Right.
But if we can move through that stuff and you make peace with it, and you see it as part of the process, you see it as a necessary thing that happened so that you could gain some wisdom and some growth. That's all designed to prepare you for bigger and better things. So
Sure.
it is a matter of perception.
Yeah, for sure. So if somebody is looking to move from the willpower behavior kind of, you know, I'm going to make this thing happen through whatever the forceful change is, and they want to move into something that's really lasting, what are the call outs or steps that you would give them? I know it's something that we work on, and we work pretty much weekly on the smaller shifts, but if somebody's not in a position to hire a coach, for example, what would be some tips that you would give them?
Well, I would say ultimately we are looking for an identity shift. What that means is like this relationship with yourself. Okay. So triathletes, a common one is okay. So there's three disciplines, and generally everybody's not that great at one of them,
Right.
So it's always the one we're not good at is going to be, yeah, I'm not a runner, right? Like that's
Right.
what we're going to be, or I'm not a swimmer, whatever. And
Yeah.
so that starts to become our identities because it's a struggle or it's more difficult than the other ones. And I'm comparing myself to everybody else. So my worst discipline, I'm going to be comparing to somebody else's best discipline.
Right.
And so from that place, I'm going to be like, well, yeah, this isn't for me. Right. And the truth is through our focus and attention and, attention to detail, yeah, I can deepen my learning around anything. I can practice thing, I can build my capacity around any sort of skill set. Right. And so it's just, I haven't had enough time in that area. And so there's some weaknesses there and some insecurities because my knowledge and my skill level is very low. Okay. And every single one of these things in life we can develop. It's just
Right.
like, well, do you want to develop it? And if we do want to develop it, I'm going to have to, I'm starting this journey of shifting my relationship with it. That means I need to start talking to myself differently and I need to start identifying with things that are going to support what I'm trying to accomplish. So I go from the person like I'm not a swimmer or runner or cyclist, and I need to start to wrap my mind around what if I could identify as at least a proficient one, or yeah, what if I'm an average? That those are all like improvements, right? We could be like I'm an average swimmer right now, right? And if it's not like too far off, if we can create some buy-in around it, that's at least progress. Okay. Where I'm just like, okay, I can start to wrap my mind around this path forward that I'm moving forward in a better direction. So if I keep working at it, I can master it. Okay.
Right.
So that's what we want to ask, like always, level do I want to operate at relative to this? Okay. And this could be even, somebody's trying to lose weight. So if you've tried a bunch of things and it hasn't worked, it's just like, oh, it's impossible for me to lose weight. Okay. But are you comparing yourself to kind of the physique competitors that are just like shredded, right? It's like relative to where you're at. It's what's something that's tangible that I can shoot for. And so I would want to look at people that are doing a little bit better than.
Sure.
And so what's their relationship with it? How do they go about their business? Yeah, can I pick their mind about it? What's their journey with it to get to this maybe mid level?
Right.
And if I have a deep desire to be the best at something, I know that that's a long journey that takes a ton of effort, takes a ton of knowledge, that is going to need very specific coaching. And that might take years. But if I'm really fascinated and interested in something, I would start asking those questions. What would it take for me to be the best in the world at this?
Sure. Sure.
And if I want that standard, I need to, it's a gut check. Like, do I need to overhaul my whole life to align with this one goal?
Right.
And so
Yeah.
most people isn't going to be that. It's going to be variances, right? It's going to be, I would like to improve here. I can't stay in the mindset of, I can't do this or it's impossible for me. I would just reach for the next level. I want to get curious and I want to understand a little bit more about this so I can come up with a better plan or strategy. Because once I can start to conceptualize the path forward,
Right.
now I can be like, oh yeah, I can make progress here. I don't have to believe it's impossible for me anymore. Okay. And so those are going to be identity shifts, and that's relative to anything. So, you know, in my own personal journey is so shifting from a baseball player to a coach, there wasn't a big jump for me. I was already kind of doing those things, right?
Right.
It's kind of like a natural part of who I am. So I didn't have to like totally shift my identity. But when I totally got out of baseball and I'm going into corporate and these other things, my mind's going to make those things different. And so I have to start to see myself differently. Okay, now I'm an executive coach, right?
Right.
So I go from a life coach to performance coach to executive coach, right? Each one of those, I'm working with different people. And so I have to take everything I took from the past and I have to move it into, okay, how is this the same?
Right.
Right? Because my mind likes to complicate things and likes to put things into categories. So it's just I can speed up the process if I can make the identity shift easier. And the
Right.
identity shift is going to be easier if I see how it's similar to things I've done before.
Right. Right.
Okay. And so for triathlon, that would be okay, well, I used to not be very good at cycling and I put the work in and I saw progress and now I'm pretty good at it.
Right.
So how do I apply those same ideas to running? How do I apply those same ideas to swimming?
Yeah.
Right.
Makes
So
sense.
so the process is the process. And so it starts with I need to shift how I'm seeing the situation. And I'm relating to it. My identity around this subject matter is completely shut down. I have zero productive beliefs around it. I have to start to open that up piece by piece.
Right.
And I started to ask the questions like, how can I make this happen? How can I get better at it? I switched to the solution of this is frustrating for me. And so I'm going to use that frustration to ask deeper questions. And in in those deeper questions, I'm going to get new answers that are going to start to expand my mind about how I'm seeing that subject. And and as I start to see more possibilities, I don't have to believe the hard line, I can't do this or I'm not good at this.
Right. Right.
And and so we have examples all over the place. It's like you can just pull up Instagram, YouTube, whatever, you can go see the best in the world doing whatever. Okay. And
Right.
a lot of people are telling their story now of how they got there.
Yeah.
and and so you want to see yourself in that story, being like, oh, okay, they're here now. And it's amazing to watch, but they went through this phase too.
Right.
And however meaningful something is to me and how much it matters to me, like that's going to determine the amount of time and effort I want to put into it. Right. So if I just want to get a little bit better at this, then I don't need to be the best in the world, but it's cool to see that that's the trajectory this person was on. I could
Right.
see the entire journey. So I just need stuff that's going to bring me to a little bit higher level. And that's what I can relate to. But it's all about opening our mind. It's about getting out of our insecurities. Okay. So an insecurity is going to come from simply like, I have a lack of knowledge or I have a lack of skills in this specific area, or I've had some sort of trauma or pain related to this subject.
Right.
And so that shut it down for me where I don't feel like it's safe. Okay. So so if I can just get over those things in terms of I understand it's part of the process of I'm going to be uncomfortable because I'm questioning those things.
Right.
Now I want to conceptualize. I want to be like, I need to see it first. So yeah, I've been getting a lot of business coaching lately. And and so for me, it's very observational at this point.
Yeah.
I'm starting to implement new things, but a lot of it's just me watching, people that do it really well. And so that's the best way I learn, is just being around it and seeing it. When I start to conceptualize, and now it seems more tangible for me to take these steps, right? And so I'm shifting into just owning this idea of being an entrepreneur and a business person, right? So it's
Right.
like, before, when I was in my ultra spiritual mode, I was like, oh no, all that stuff's stupid, right?
Right.
I don't want money, right? Like all
Right.
those things, right? So
Yeah.
and that was a phase. I needed to go through that to gain this knowledge, right? And
Right.
so it's this progression of like, okay, now how do I help as many people as possible?
Right.
And and so I need to watch. I'm not doing it currently, so I need to learn how to do it. And
Right.
so that's like it's an ego check at the door, being like, okay, I don't know how to do this. I have to watch people that do it really well. And what's the next best step for me? I don't need to be where they're at.
Yeah.
I just need to take one step at a time, and eventually I'll get to where they're at. Right.
Right.
And that's
Right.
it's literally how everything works. It's not that complicated. The only thing that's complicated is we get stuck emotionally in the past, and then we try to disprove any sort of progress.
Right. Yeah. How do you like there's an element of patience that goes along with this though also, right? So you're shifting into something, but I'm wondering if you can say in terms of these shifts and identity and whatever in that example you just used, right? Of the eventually I'll get there. There's a lot of patience, and maybe that goes back to the ego thing, right? Of like checking the ego when it comes to the timeline. But I think that's worth touching on just a little bit more.
Yeah, absolutely. So, I know when I first got into, yeah, with the corporate wellness and, trying to get all these things going, it was just like, oh, I'm going to make money fast, right? I'm going to do like
Right.
all these things are going to come quick. And then, it's like, as you take the journey, you're just like, oh yeah, this is going to take longer than I thought it would. And I actually have a lot of skills I need to develop in the process, right?
Right.
It's, there's really honestly no shortcuts. And then, yeah, I started to wrap my mind around, okay, commonly people that are on the other side of it would be like, yeah, it takes about 10 years to really get rolling. And, I think that's very difficult for people to wrap their mind around, is a 10-year period. And, I'm approaching 10 years now with coaching. And so it's just like, yeah, I feel like 1,000 times more confident than I was before.
Right.
Like, I can see the path to it, but it is this just willingness to dig in and do the work, to be like, okay, if I want this, all I have to do is stick with it long enough to develop the skills necessary. Once you have the skills, and then you got the clear message to communicate to people, it's only a matter of time, right? And so
Right.
that's how all these things are. It's just like, it's consistency. It's the ability to stick with things. That's why resilience is so important. Is you're going to have problems, and those problems are designed to develop you. If you don't work through those problems, you don't get the learning. You don't get the
Right.
lesson, right? And now you have skill deficiencies, which is going to lead to insecurities, right? So if I try to
Sure.
take shortcuts, I'm not going to develop the skills necessary that I need to work on the level I want to work at. And so you see this commonly. It's like, everybody's posting stuff online as an expert, and, they might be 1 year in, right? Or
Sure.
6 months in. It's just like, well, you just read a book. You're not an expert. It's going to be life experience. It's going to be working through the problems, because when we have the experience behind things, that creates that depth of, I can problem solve on so many levels, because I've deepened the well so far that there's nothing around this subject matter that surprises me anymore.
Sure.
Okay.
Sure.
So even in our coaching, I literally say, yeah, bring up whatever you want. I don't care, because I see how it affects the mind and the nervous system, and how that shuts us down. Right. And so all I'm
Right.
trying to do is rework that over and over again. And you can give me any topic. It doesn't matter. Like, nothing's going to surprise me. And there are things that can be more intense emotionally. And that's why I dive the depths in myself. Like, I want to confront my deepest pain, so that I can sit there with another person in their deepest pain and help
Right.
guide them through it, right? And so this patience, it's a necessary component. I may think I want some things, and my mind probably tells me I want them now. Okay, but
Right.
as I go on the journey, I start shedding so many things that I thought I wanted that I don't even care about anymore, right?
Yeah.
But each time I shed something, I get more and more real about what's authentic for me. So that's what the journey is. And it's like me, it's always about becoming something more. It's about becoming more in tune with yourself. And to be honest with you, it is a ton of like unlearning the past. That's like mostly
Yeah.
what it is. And so,
Yeah.
my business coaching work, it's like, yeah, I hate sales calls. I don't like marketing that much. Like,
Right.
like follow up, prospecting, all these, but if I want a successful business, I need to learn all these aspects and I need to do them on a regular basis. Right. So I have to become a person that does that work on a regular basis, not just when it's like convenient or when it's easy. It's like even the times when it's hard. I have to, just stick with it, right? And that's how you develop those skills. And so the work that I was resisting is like the work I have to conquer now to get to the next level.
Right. Yeah, there's a quote about that, right? The work you're actively resisting is actually where the magic happens or something like that. And probably don't have that exactly right, but you know what I mean.
Yeah, and that's it's true for whatever it is.
Yeah.
Like I said, whatever we're not proficient in, whatever we have weakness around. And sales and marketing, it's like kind of easy to get jaded by that. I think we've all been
Right.
around like sleazy salespeople and like all that.
Yeah.
But it's like, okay, I want to do sales that like are authentic for me, right? Like I have a solution for people and I need to present that in a clean way so
Right.
so that I have people to work with, right? So it's just like it's taking all these things to a higher level where initially we all have these negative judgments about how it's normally done. And so you have to work through it to try and find the right recipe for you. Okay. And so I'm not a one size fits all person. We're always just reaching for something that feels at least neutral, right? Where I don't feel like I'm manipulating or hurting other people, those kinds of things. And so it's like I want to work with people who want to work with me, right? And so it's
Right.
like how do I
Yeah.
speak to them? How do
Yeah.
I deepen that knowledge? So it's an identity shift of like, okay, yeah, now I have to, I've always been like, I just want to coach, but now it's like,
Yeah.
okay, I have to be a marketer, I have to be a
Right.
salesperson, right? Like I have to do these things. And so I have to clean up my relationship with them so that it's not such a struggle to get through them. Okay. So
Right.
the resistance is going to come from my negative judgments about that area. Okay. So if I'm procrastinating, if I'm dreading something, there's something from my past that I've associated to the situation where my nervous system's trying to protect me. Okay.
Right.
So that's all I'm trying to do is come to peace with it and shift my perspective so that it's like neutral or positive so that I can just go approach the work and it doesn't create all these negative feelings within me, which is going to create negative thoughts.
Right.
So anywhere we struggle, generally there's a lot of negative judgments around it. And we get to choose those, and that's the accountability responsibility piece is like I formed my own beliefs, whether out of necessity or not, they're within
Right.
me. And I have to rework them if I want to open up this area of my life. And that's the humble part. That's the surrender part of like where I was maybe in direct opposition to something, I have to open up to the place where this is part of who I am. And so it's an acceptance. And that's like a fundamental identity shift is if I want to be speaking on stages and do all these, big things that coaches do, right? Okay, who do I have to become? Like that's that question.
Right.
And so the work is pretty obvious. You just look at the people that are doing it. Okay, what do they do on a regular basis? And so how do I match myself up with that?
Yeah. Yeah. Well, then
And
there's that willingness piece in it, right? You have to be
Mhm.
willing to do it. Yeah.
Yeah, and that's this work is like it's a very like integrated part of who I am. Like all day, every day, part of my attention's focused internally on what I'm feeling.
Right.
And if anything sticks with me, I'm reworking it in the moment. Like I'm very present with it. This is what I naturally do anyway. So it's like a bonus that it's also a job. Right. So it's
Right.
like
Yeah.
if it wasn't my job, I would still be doing this.
Yeah. Yeah. That's very cool.
There is no separation. And that's what we want, this expanded identity that allows for all of it. Right. It allows for me to be dynamic and to shift as needed, right? Like I don't just pigeonhole myself in one area and then that's where I am the rest of my life because I'm basically suppressed growth and I'm like shutting down any new possibilities from that place. And so that's going to lead to unhappiness over time. I'm not going to be fulfilled because I didn't move with life, right? So every
Right.
time something new comes in, there's an expansion of my mind and then I have to wrap my mind around this new idea. And so that creates this this separation within me of okay, like this is becoming more real to me, but I believe this. So this is more exciting to me, so I'm going to let go of this limitation.
Right.
And so it's that continual process over and over again. So, the work never stops if we want to, because we're always going to have new desires if we allow ourselves to pursue them.
Right. Yeah. For sure. So, as you're using a lot of examples in yourself right now, which I think is great. So if you're thinking about needing to like prove it to yourself, right, in order to get this, I would tell you from my experience, the mantra thing, well, it's not bad. It doesn't necessarily help the actual change. So just telling
Mhm.
yourself, I'm outspoken or whatever isn't enough to actually fully get there. So how do you get to the place of proving it to yourself that you are in fact making the shift in the identity?
Well, so quite literally, the journey is going to be I'm going to be confronted with a version that's much further along than I am. Okay. So this is somebody that embodies this principle that I want. Okay. And so this could be athletes, this could be business people, even at your company, right? There's certain leaders where you're just like, oh, this person's really impressive. Okay. And so throughout our life, we're going to have models of being this person operating at this level. And there's going to be an attraction to that. There's something about this that I think is special. So that's generally a clue to what I want actually, right? I want to be like this person in some way. And so as we see that, now I'm measuring myself like, okay, I'm going to have uncomfortable feelings come out. And in that process, it's those beliefs are going to surface of what I really believe. So I see the model of it. And so part of me already believes that it's possible, but there's a bigger part of me that's shut down around that area. Okay. And so if I just say like, oh, like I'm this strong, powerful leader, uh, if I just tell myself that over and over again, and this is where like mantras are helpful is I'm going to say something. And if I don't believe it, I'm going to have a reaction in my body.
Sure.
We've done this before, right? I'd be like, hey, think about this
That
with some potential in the future. And all we're trying to do is bring up the parts of you that doesn't believe it. Okay. So if that's my dream is I want to be a powerful speaker, right? And I don't believe that at all about myself. Me saying that is going to wake up those wounds, those feelings within me about why I don't believe that about myself. Okay. That's where the work is. As I go into that work and I start to examine it, being like, okay, where did this come from? Why do I feel this way? What am I protecting myself from?
right.
Yeah. Is there some sort of trauma, like embarrassment or pain around it? As I take a look at those things and I'm confronting that pain, by me bringing my attention to it and being curious about it, I'm starting to soften it already. Okay. So I want to look at it. I want to bring my emotions and my mind to a better place about those situations. So I call it we're neutralizing it. This negative experience, we're trying to bring it back to neutral because we do that through our judgment. So I judged this situation as bad and I left it in a bad place. Now I'm acting based on those beliefs. Okay. So as I start to neutralize it, it starts to lose power and I'm creating space within myself to step more fully into this model that I want to become. Okay. Measure again. Like, so as I do that work, okay, I'm going to be taking some actions in terms of the desire to become that is becoming greater because I'm kind of cleaning off all the stuff that's gotten in the way of that from my
Right.
past. And so I have some more room to work with now. So I can go take a step in that direction. It doesn't have to be a massive step. It can be if we want it to be, but if I'm taking a massive step, there's probably going to be a ton of insecurities coming up. So I want to take
Right.
one little step at a time in that direction, something that's manageable. I'm just approaching it and making myself familiar with this subject matter. See, I need to conceptualize how to. I've seen it embodied well. I'm trying to embody it myself. I need to take a step forward, and when I do that, I'm going to get new data about the things that are holding me back,
Right.
and that's where I go back into that work. It's this back and forth until I start to feel confident enough to take bigger and bigger steps. Okay, and we're going to do those things naturally when we clear out the garbage in our nervous system that's shutting us down.
Right. Right.
So so it's just gonna be like, "Oh, yeah, I'll go do this. I'll go put myself in this situation," and it's not a big deal. It's not gonna create a ton of anxiety because I addressed the fears related to it. So it makes it all more approachable where I'm not going into the deep end. I'm taking one step at a time, and with each step, I'm learning more and more about myself. As I recalibrate my beliefs around that area, I'm gaining that strength and confidence to be like, "Oh, yeah, I could probably do that." Right?
Right.
And
Right.
so it starts to become matter of fact of like, yeah, this is gonna be my logical next step is when we're really close to it. And so as we take that journey, we'll get to the point of saying like, okay, I'm a powerful speaker. That's gonna be matter of fact. Okay. I'm not gonna like, there's not gonna be a part of me that's got like a ton of resistance to that.
Sure. Sure.
Okay. So, that's literally we need the model. Okay. We need to take small steps. We need to have the self-awareness to unpack what's holding me back, what's shutting me down, and we need to question it. We need to rework it. And this whole process gets sped up with an expert or a coach, somebody
Right.
that's really good at that. They're oh yeah, like this, and that. You can point out the areas where it's just like, yeah, this is in conflict with what you want. So how do we reconcile this? How do we move through this?
Right.
Because all you're trying to do is match yourself up with that skill set. Okay. So I mean, me going through a sales process every single day is like a foreign idea to me. Usually I'm just like waiting
Sure.
on referrals and stuff like that,
Yeah.
right? So
Yeah.
it's like me playing offense rather than defense. Okay.
Right.
So it's me taking initiative and okay, yeah. If I want to grow rapidly, like these are the things needed to do that. And so I have to every time I take a step, now that's going to bring up insecurities within me. I have to work those out and then I can take a bigger step. And you just keep doing that until it becomes a part of who you are.
Yeah.
And then it doesn't feel like a stretch anymore. It's just, oh yeah, I just stay on this track.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. Makes sense.
Mhm. And so we call the ego complicates everything because it's trying to create workarounds, which is like it's trying to protect us from pain. So anything that's hurt us in the past, it's got these coping mechanisms. So we try and go around things rather than through them. Okay. And so in that process, it can get pretty crazy, right? Where people are like, oh, yeah, I'm trying to accomplish this, but then they're way over here. Uh,
Yeah.
and there's like a
Yeah.
massive disconnect, but to them, they think they're doing it, right?
Right.
But it's because they've got so many workarounds in their mind that they're way off track and they don't even realize it. That's
Right.
why everybody kind of needs some truth in their life, right? You need to be told like, hey, you're off track here. It's okay, but we got to do some work to get you back on track.
Yeah. Yeah.
So it's really getting back to common sense on so many levels. You would just do these things naturally if you didn't get hurt by them at some point. It's very obvious. If I want to be a great athlete, okay, I need to train all the time, right? Like
Right.
anything
Yeah.
that's telling me that I don't need to train, that's probably some workaround, right? Like where it's just like I just complicated a very basic thing. Yeah.
Right. Or yeah, looking for it's the shortcut thing. If I take the supplement, if I do the XYZ, then I don't have to do as much of this over here, which never
Yeah. I
turns
mean,
out true.
well, there's tools, right, that can like help, right? But the fundamentals are generally always the same no matter what.
Right.
You can't skip those. It, people that master something, it's just literally they just stuck with the fundamentals over and over again throughout many, many years. And they didn't complicate the process, but in that process, they deepened their knowledge to a certain place where they're functioning from almost certainty around something. Okay. So it's just this high level of confidence around a specific thing because they've just done it thousands and thousands of times.
Right.
And when you're operating from there is no anxiety. There isn't, it's just like, oh yeah, I can do this. No big deal. I've done it 1,000 times before.
Right. Yeah. And sometimes I think that kind of work or that sort of showing up consistently, people could view as boring, right?
Yeah.
Depending
Well,
on how they look at it. And
I,
yeah, but
I
that's
think
really what it takes.
anybody you talk to that's really good at something, it's always going to be the boring things. I developed the skill by sitting with myself for thousands of hours. So, extremely boring, but it was fascinating to me. So that's all that matters. All right.
Right. All right. Okay, Brandon. So we covered a lot again today, sort of like we do in every episode. But I'm wondering if you have anything you want to wrap up on that might help people with as they're thinking about breaking free from an old identity or a shift in identity.
I think the main idea is that it's possible for you if you have a desire behind something. There's a way to it on some level, right? And that's going to be relative to your path. So it's just going to be if you have a desire to get better, there's going to be a path to that. And so I need to start to conceptualize what that might look like for me. I need to start to question my thinking around it. If I feel really shut down around something, generally there's some pain, or maybe it was just simply growing up, the people around me shamed that or put a lot of negative judgment on a specific subject area. So it felt like it wasn't safe.
Right.
So these are all just kind of clues to generally everything's going to stem from your past. Our identities are generally to protect us. And if I want something new, I need to start to question that and be like, do I still need this protection? What can I surrender that's going to open up my mind and expand me to do things a little bit differently? Because so behaviors are going to kind of follow naturally when I adopt these new identity or belief systems. It doesn't need to be that complicated. It's just what do the best do on a regular basis. Those are the things I need to be doing, and I need to do
Right.
that at a dose that's right for me in terms of the context of your life. Right? Some people you're probably not trying to be the best. You probably just want things to be a little bit better. That just starts with like, okay, what habits do I need to adopt? But we don't stay there. Just I need to change a habit. It's more of like, who do I need to become in that process? And
Right.
so that's a bigger question where we're letting go of past judgments and shifting our relationship with that area so that we can see ourselves becoming something more in that area.
Yeah. Awesome.
And so, yeah, I'm super excited. March 4th, we're beginning the Lightning Lab. So this is a group coaching program, spans 3 months. So each 3-month pod, I'm going to be focusing on a different topic. So this first one is going to be authentic confidence blueprint. So we're just going to dig into the fundamentals of how to really work through problems to gain confidence and how to embody it more. So this will include 2 teaching sessions per month and 1 breakthrough Q&A session per month, as well as there's a community feature so you can interact with me and others in the group. And so once again, we're starting this on March 4th. Super excited about that. If you're interested in one-to-one work with me or hearing more about how this can help you, you can schedule a strategy session on my website, brandonthelk.com. And if you have any questions pertaining to the podcast, you can email me at podcast@brandonthelk.com.
Yeah, for sure. We'll make sure that all of the ways that you can connect with Brandon or the podcast are in the show notes or the description for this if you happen to be watching it on YouTube.
All right. Well, thanks for listening, guys. We look forward to next time.
Awesome. Talk to you later.
All right. Bye.